Hello and welcome to another episode of Fan Formula. This is a few days after the um, Belgian Grand Prix. I forgot exactly what was going on for a couple of seconds. Rattle through these relatively quickly. I did film this the other night, but I realised when I watched it back, because I was pretty tired and I thought I mentioned something I shouldn't have mentioned. Yeah, well, one, I mentioned something that I can't mention. Well, I can mention it, but because I don't wish to make it very well known. I didn't want to submit it, but also I was dead tired, and there was Raikkonen changes his tone of pitch to voice tone more often than I did in that video. It was a complete monotone. Everyone probably would have fallen asleep about 30 seconds of watching it. So on to the questions. Question has to be asked: Rosberg versus Hamilton. Your views on the incident and the aftermath, please. Thank you for being so polite, Fan Formula. Well, the actual incident itself, I agree with the FIA. It was just a racing incident because Rosberg was trying to go for an overtake. He could have put the stoppers on, but then there's no guarantee, one, he could have got the stoppers on in time and pulled back in, or been allowed to pull back in, so it was, it would have potentially been possible for him to have gotten around, or at least held level with Hamilton. So I agree that the incident has no blame as such. No one is at fault as such. However, Rosberg should have thought twice about sticking his front wing there at that point in the race. I agree with what Eddie Jordan said on BBC, and Toto Wolff, and I think Niki Lauda also made the same point as well. They should have just gone single file for a couple of laps, pulled the gap out, and then boom, gone. It's what they've done in Bahrain and other places, so what would be different in Spa-Francorchamps? It doesn't make very much difference. Now, it's very well documented. I'm not a Hamilton fan, so I didn't feel any great loss about him not getting through. Granted, if it'd be nice to have an Englishman win something prestigious this year. Yeah, the aftermath could have been handled so much better. Hamilton was a complete twit for doing what he did. Stay going. Oh, Rosberg said in the debrief that he deliberately crashed into me. That's no different to him tweeting telemetry when he was back at McLaren. To me, that's a sackable offence, and he's very much in the firing line for doing that. That said, Rosberg was maybe a bit nonchalant about it. Rosberg was not entirely blameless in the aftermath. I will give kudos though, as the lovely Lee McKenzie mentioned on the F1 forum. I think it was at the tail end. Yeah, it was on the F1 forum. Whoever has done some media training with Hamilton, whether assuming he's had extra media training, or if he's just grown up a bit. The interview he gave to the BBC after the incident, he was nice and controlled. Granted, he had his sunglasses on, so it was obvious that there was only going to be so much we were going to get out of him. But it was nice to see that, he was that he'd learned to rein it in a little bit. So it's not too bad. We'll see what will happen. But no, it was not handled very well by anyone. No one is to blame more than anyone else in the aftermath. Because, let's say, Rosberg, in places, I can see why some of the uber Mercedes fans thought he was a bit smug. Yes, he did seem a little, let's say, a little nonchalant about it. He did seem a little smug, but that might be just Rosberg's general demeanour. Hamilton should have kept his trap shut. My interpretation on the whole thing, to be honest, the whole thing started to wind me up. And I tweeted a couple of things that I don't care what people think about what it was. Basically, as the world ended, or is it just a Formula 1 race sort of thing? But it was not. It was not anything I cared too much about. But I think what they mean is Rosberg didn't deliberately necessarily crash into him, but he did put his car in a place deliberately where it could happen, if that makes sense. So he didn't go in there with the intention of what happened, but he went in there with the intention of making a point. Excuse me. Question 2. Discuss your thoughts on the change of drivers Caterham and Marussia over the Grand Prix. Is it all about money or a strategy game? For Marussia, I think it was just a money thing. Because from what I heard, Chilton's sponsors are behind on payments. And to be honest, it's no different. If you fall in arrears on something on a hire purchase agreement or on your mortgage, you run the risk of the whole thing having to be taken away. So, for instance, in the mortgage situation, you'll then be granted though it goes through litigation and litigation solicitors before going to repossession. Quite often there's several attempts to avoid going to repossession where possible. But eventually, if you don't keep up with your payments, that's it. Game over. Job done. We're taking it back. So I don't know how many payments behind Chilton's people are, but it certainly would seem that at Marussia it was more about money. Caterham, thank God they ditched that funny nose that they ran with. What the hell was the idea behind that stupid nose? I went on about a Velocity Kinetics video. I felt a bit conflicted over it because they thought a bit differently. Why the bloody hell have they thought differently, sort of thing. I like the fact that the Lotus nose is wow, it's different. Someone thought a bit different. Caterham, wow, they thought a bit differently. It doesn't seem to work. So it's good to see the car looking a bit normal. It's a twofold thing with Caterham, I think, because Caterham, I doubt, are in the very best of situations financially. I don't think Kobayashi's a pay driver. They're just back on popularity, hoping that would bring more people interested in the team. Probably the idea with Kobayashi was bring someone who's popular in, team gets popular, people buy team kit makes money, makes the team go forward. Probably. Well, that's my impression of how the Caterham team seems to think things work anyway. As I understand, Kobayashi was also not the very best of people who gave feedback. He was a bit lacking in his technical feedback, for want of a better word. But I think it was a mixture of both at Caterham. Yes, they needed the money, but they need to get the car moving in the right direction, because if they can't get it right this year, it's similar rules next year, as I think. I'm not kept up to date with what the design specs are for next year. But they need as much feedback as they can get. Granted, they could have made a better choice. They maybe could have brought in Kovalainen, although I'd be very understanding if Caterham rang him, he just told him to fuck off, which I'd applaud Kovalainen if he did that. But it's Caterham. It was both. Caterham was definitely they needed. They need feedback to get the car moving in the right direction. They need money to make it happen. So, I think Andre was just trying to... Is it how you pronounce his name? I don't know how you pronounce his name. But the whole point was, I think, to try and get some feedback from someone who's done a lot of racing and knows quite a lot more. And to be honest, at the moment, it's proven Kobayashi should have stayed with the Ferrari endurance racing team. At least he would have had a shot at driving a Scuderia car every once in a while. Anyway, Ricciardo and Vettel both came through the Red Bull development program. Will there be the same success with Verstappen? I'm conflicted on the Verstappen issue. Issue? Could call it an issue, I guess. Now, I agree with what Jenson Button said. If someone said, we're giving you a Formula 1 drive, do you accept? Someone knocked on my door and said, it's like if I got an email from Rooster Teeth or Achievement Hunter, as much as I wish that would happen, the likelihood of that happening is very, very, very long. The odds are very low. Low as in the likelihood of it happening next to nothing. If that said, if someone offered me that opportunity, and if someone said, Chris, we're going to offer you a job at Williams, but Rooster Teeth are also wanting you as well in Texas, like Rooster Teeth. Whilst I'd love to work for Williams, Rooster Teeth is the same people who made the Free Edgar t-shirt and Achievement Hunter and things. It's one of these things, if that opportunity arises, you're going to go. Or if I'm sure a lot of Grace tweeted something that she's doing something for Autosport next year, I think it is. I doubt she'd had to think twice about that. Like if someone came to anyone who does a half decent F1, does a decent F1 blog, so someone came to me about Velocity and Kinetics, and someone went to Grace about her blog. I'm trying to think of a couple of other good ones I can't remember off the top of my head. Bugger. F1 Technical, that's the other good one. If someone came to the people who ran those and said, look, we're from Sky, we're from BBC, you want in? You're not going to think twice. So I appreciate from what Button said. If someone said, you want in on Formula 1? Verstappen's gone, yeah, I understand that. However, I do think Verstappen is a bit young, to be honest. He could very much be in a position like Al Jaswari was. I think Al Jaswari was not even my age, so I'm only 24. I don't think Al Jaswari was even my age when he got kicked, well, had to retire from F1. The only problem is if he doesn't do well, he's going to be a very young driver with a lot of career ahead of him and not great prospects, assuming he doesn't do well. I do think, though, a point that Eddie Jordan raised on the BBC coverage, Red Bull, it's fine they're bringing drivers up through the system. It's perfectly fine. That's what the system is for. But they need to start doing something. They need to have something in place for their drivers when there's no drive for them at Red Bull. There's no more drive for them at Toro Rosso. They need to either have another tie-in with another team. I don't want to see more Red Bull sponsoring anywhere, to be honest, because I get sick to death of it just simply because I don't like the company as a whole. Nothing against the people who build the Formula 1 cars, etc. I just don't like the Red Bull company as a whole very much. That's a separate issue. But then, some sort of tie-in somewhere so they could say, okay, well, I doubt they go to another top team, but they could say, for example, to Williams, maybe, we're going to give you X amount of money from the Red Bull company, but we want one of our drivers to keep an eye on every once in a while with a test session in your car. Okay, fair enough. Sort of, or like a Marussia say, look, you sort of have a third team almost, sort of, to bring them through like did Ricciardo. To be honest, I think Verstappen could benefit with coming through how Ricciardo did, because a lot of people seem to forget Ricciardo did time in a HRT before coming to Toro Rosso and then coming to a Red Bull. So he's come through a whole varying degree of build quality, if that makes sense. He's had to put up with the general shite of a HRT. He's had to not put up with, because the Toro Rosso can be a relatively good car on its day. He's had to put up with an okay car and then gone to a very good car. I still think Verstappen's too young. Same success. Who knows? Because it depends on who designs the car. Vettel at the moment, I'm not saying he didn't deserve the championships, but at the moment with how Vettel was driving, you could very much say, well, it was the car that won the championships for him, not him. But don't get started on the whole Vettel-Webber. Well, Vettel won them, Webber didn't. I appreciate that. I'm not delving into that. I'm just looking at it on from the surface. So it really depends on what the car is like and how much say he has in the design and what engine they're using, because he might not like the engine they're driving. So who knows? And the bonus question: Raikkonen is back on better form with his best result of the season. Will he get a podium this year, and will he really stay in F1? I wouldn't write Raikkonen off for a podium ever. He's a bit like Alonso in the sense that you shouldn't write him off for a decent result, but that said, you'd write him off before Alonso, quite a lot before Alonso some days. Yes, I think he'll get a podium. At the moment, though, I think that's going to be down. We'll have to see how Ferrari go at a couple of other tracks, but I think it will come down to attrition if he gets on the podium at the moment. Will he really stay in F1? I don't know. It's Raikkonen, and he's I like the guy, but sometimes he is a bit flaky, in my opinion, or comes across a bit flaky in the media. So that's probably why I think he's a bit flaky. It really depends, because Ferrari might suddenly turn around at the end of the year and say, "Nope, don't want you." Matty actually might change his mind and say, "Actually, no, we signed Jenson Button." Likelihood of that is very slim, to be honest, but that could happen. Depends on what Raikkonen's like with technical feedback. Ferrari might want someone who gives them a lot more feedback, so they might go to, like I said, they might try and get a Button, or they might try and get a Vettel, or might even bring through a Hulkenberg, something like that. But I couldn't say. Technically, he should still be in F1 because of his contract, and he's contractually obliged to still be there. But realistically, who knows? Only he knows what Maranello are trying to do for next year. So I imagine if he knows that next year's car is going to try and be an improvement, or visibly going to be an improvement over what it is this year, then I imagine he'll try and stay. But the F1 world is a crazy place, and who knows? It may happen, it may not. But there we are. Bit of a downer in the set for that last question, in the sense that I can't really give a right answer, but that's the nature of Fan Formula as well. Anyway, that's the end of this Fan Formula submission. Keep checking out Velocity Kinetics. New post went up a couple of weeks ago. I say new because it's a couple of weeks old. About looking at smaller cars with small engines in big cars and seeing whether that's a good idea. It's just a lot of opinions in that video, so you're free to have your own if you want to join the debate. Join it on WordPress or join it on YouTube. Everyone keep safe, and we'll see you for Monza, I would imagine. Assuming I've not worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, or too engrossed in 7 days to die. But there we go. Anyway, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you later.